I'm going to call to order this Lacey City Council meeting on September 15th, 2022. If you're able, please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So we do have a published agenda. I don't think any major changes are to the agenda. At the end of this council meeting, we're going to be adjourning to a work session. And we're going to need about 5 minutes to get set for a work session. But with that, can I get a motion to approve the agenda and consent agenda?
I would move to approve the agenda and consent agenda as published.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
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 Is there anyone opposed? Then that motion unanimously carries. We have an agenda and we've approved our consent agenda. First up on our approved agenda tonight is public recognitions and presentations, our Lacey Youth Council report. And hopefully Raphael is here, or a Lacey Youth Council member. Come up. Our Lacey Youth Council has a meeting right before our meeting, so out there in the next room, I think a youth council member is on his way. Hopefully. Come on up. Yep. This is our amazing youth council. Go ahead, Raphael.
Absolutely. Good evening. I'd like to introduce you this evening to our 2022-2023 Lacey Youth Council. On behalf of City of Lacey, these fine young people here are striving to move forward and really, build on the success of previous youth councils, and they would like to give their introductions to each of you council members.
Excellent.
Well, hello, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Deputy Mayor, and City Council. My name is Justin Begley, and I attend Timberline High School. I'll be a senior this year. One thing that I want to achieve this year is to just build off what we did last year with the council and to continue to work with the Commission on Equity to make our schools and our community more equitable for everyone. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your service.
Hi guys, how are you? My name is Rihanna Joseph. I go to River Ridge High School. I'm also going to be a senior this year. This is my second year on the council. Like Justin said, one of my goals is to expand some of the things that we worked on last year. We were a little bit restricted because of COVID and everything being in a virtual setting. So with us being in person now, I want to really broaden what we worked on last year, especially broadening the perspective of youth upon local government as well as working with our peers to educate them on the systems of local government.
Thank you. Thank you for your service.
Hi, my name is Alanis Blackburn. I go to River Ridge as well, and I will be a senior this year. A couple goals I have, this is my second year on the council, by the way, and a couple goals I have for this year is to see some tangible differences. I want to leave, especially considering that after this year I'll be off to college and out of the city. I want to at least say, I did make, at least 5 tangible changes, as this year, as upcoming next June of 2023 comes around. I want to be able to say that before I make my mark on another city. And I also want to shed a light on just the education system and use, my place in society as a youth member to not only make tangible differences, but to just have important conversations that need to be had and just share that perspective as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your service.
Hi, my name is Janine Bermudez. I'm currently going to Timberline as a senior, and a goal I have in mind is mainly to use what I learned here during youth council and apply in like the future, because this is my first experience or like first year here. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your service.
Hi, my name is Zuri Ramirez. I'm a sophomore at North Thurston High School, and this year, the biggest goal I have in mind is I want to learn as much as possible from this experience. I feel just like a little bit out of place here. And I want to be able to be more comfortable doing things like this, and I want to learn about government and all those things. And hopefully by the end of this year, or maybe next year, if I do this again, I want to have made a difference in the community overall, and yeah, that's all.
Thank you for your service, and you're doing great.
Hello, my name is Hunter Akalirai. I go to River Ridge High School. I'm going to be a junior this year. This is my first year on the Lacey Youth Council, and one thing I would like to see change is to just help the Youth Council and also maybe even the council in general is to help the community just like come together and be closer as a whole. Yeah, thank you.
Great. Thank you for your service.
Hi, my name is Ayana Young. I go to North Thurston High School. I am a junior this year. And one goal that I have is just to contribute to making as many positive changes as I can here.
Thank you. Thank you for your service.
Hi everyone, my name is Abigail Sari. I'm a junior and I go to North Thurston High School. This is my second year on the council, and I think one of my biggest goals for the council this year is to further the progress that we made last year, but also amplify student voice and let the youth know that they can make connections with local leaders and local people in government, and also educate youth on how the system of local government works. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your service.
My name is Sarah Town, and I am a junior at North Thurston High School this year. This is also my second year on the council, and I think my biggest goal for this year on the council is to just make a difference in my community and to learn as much as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah.
Hello, my name is Kiara Coleman, and I'll be a junior at Timberline High School. And one of my biggest goals for this year, because it's my first year, is just being a voice for the youth and helping our community out for the youth.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Nathaniel Clay. I am a junior at Timberline High School, and my biggest goal for this year is the whole reason I joined was to make some type of big impact on the community, and I want to learn more about local government, just government in general, so I can do that.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Keegan Bold. I'm a senior at River Ridge, and I'm hoping to provide a student perspective on like technology, and then also a voice for neurodiverse and LGBTQ plus youth, and then also just help others around me, other youth around me, recognize their role and importance in governance.
Thank you. Thank you for your service.
And so, once again, Rafael Fernandez. So I am going to be this year's Lacey Youth Council coordinator, and my goal for the Lacey Youth Council is to allow them to provide them all the necessary resources to achieve their goals and to bridge those gaps that they identified throughout the year, as well as coming together more holistically throughout the community and collectively with the council itself. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Can you guys come up here and shake your hands? Good seeing you. Hey, good seeing you.
You too.
Nice to see you. Thank you. Thank you. Hey. Thank you. Thank you. Good seeing you. Good. Thank you. Good job. Good job. Thank you. Good. Thank you.
Handshake. It works every time.
Well, as you can tell, the future of Lacey is in great hands, and we're looking forward to all the great accomplishments that our youth council is going to have this year. And finally, there back in person and meeting and really be able to get to work. The past couple of years with COVID, everything's been virtual, and it's so tough to work in that environment. So I really applaud the past youth councils who had to deal with that, and then of course the returning youth council members and the new youth council. I think we have just a great group of people, and I really look forward to learning from them, which is why we have them here, is to learn from our youth. Okay, so next up on our agenda is public comment. We did have one person sign up for public comment. And Jason, you want to come on up? You can just introduce yourself and tell us where you live, and keep your comments about 3 minutes.
Of course, I'm Jason Borgo, work for City of Lacey Public Works. I live down Yelm Highway, and I just have a comment about the flag policy. A few years ago, Public Works staff were instructed to remove any and all sports team-related materials from city vehicles. Citizens and fellow staff who preferred another team were complaining. The logos became too controversial and no longer authorized. And I thought, how could a team logo be so controversial and not the flag? When the pride flag first flew over our city shop, it felt wrong, but I couldn't verbalize my concerns. As the years came and went, each National Day of Prayer, a single day would pass without so much as an email acknowledging the occasion. But just a few short weeks later, the pride flag would be flown for an entire month. I am a Christian, and as a follower of Jesus, I'm called to love the Lord my God with all my heart, soul, mind, and strength. Also to love my neighbor as myself. God's love is for all of us, the whole world, every tribe, nation, and tongue. However, it's important to separate the love for people from the love of the choices that they make. A lifestyle that opposes God's will grieves the Lord, and so it grieves me, and I am compelled to rebuke the opposition of God's will. I sincerely understand the human need to feel recognized, centered, and supported as this policy states is its intention, but these goals don't align with core functions of city government. And we all have personal preferences in our life, and we have the freedom to choose those interests as Americans, and I support and defend those rights. But when we as policy and government place a greater importance on or elevate one set of personal values or a belief system above another, the consequence is a discriminatory policy, as previously expressed in emails to you all. The organizers of Pride events this year nationwide outright barred attendance by police officers, even those belonging to the LGBTQ community. The politics of Pride seemingly outweighs the identity of the community members. Now, in regard to existing policy, with identity politics being so pervasive in our culture and the pride flag being a symbol of identity, Section 6.6, titled Guidelines for Political Activity, states, "No elected official or employee of the city shall use public funds, property, or any other thing belonging to the city to promote or oppose any political cause or office." Further, in Section 1.2, under the heading Interpersonal Standards, Protocols, and Ground Rules, bullet point number 6 states, "Remember, we represent all the people, not a select few interests." And bullet point 18 says, "Do not be misled by the strong demands of special interests groups. Find the long-term public interest of the community as a whole." So I ask that we keep these expressions of such personal, intimate nature, just that, they stay personal and private. And I ask that the city in policy remain unbiased and professional and adopt a neutral flag policy, and I respectfully request we stop flying the pride flag.
Thank you for your comments. I don't think there's anyone else who signed up for public comment. And so we will go on to our proclamation. Proclamation for National Voter Registration Day. I think Mary is hopefully signed on, and we're going to actually start with Councilmember Kunkel.
City of Lacey official proclamation. Whereas registering to vote empowers eligible citizens to exercise their right to vote on Election Day. And
whereas the City of Lacey is committed to strengthening democracy by encouraging voter registration and increasing participation in all elections. And
whereas civic-minded people and organizations have collaborated to establish September 20th, 2022 as National Voter Registration Day. And
whereas the goal for the 2022 National Voter Registration Day is to create awareness of elections and motivate eligible citizens to vote in coming months. And
whereas the strength of our democracy depends on the willingness of our citizens to participate by choosing those who will lead us and by voicing their opinions on important matters that will come before the voters on Election Day.
Now, therefore, I, Andy Ryder, Mayor of the City of Lacey, on behalf of the Lacey City Council, do hereby recognize September 20th, 2022 as National Voter Registration Day in Lacey, and encourage all eligible citizens residents to register to vote. Signed by myself, Mayor Andy Ryder, September 15th, 2022. And Mary Hall, it looks like you're muted, but you're up.
Thank you so much. I can't begin to tell you how powerful it is with each and every one of you reading a part of that proclamation. It's really amazing. And also your youth council gives me so much hope for the future. What an amazing group of young people. So thank you so much for recognizing National Voter Registration Day. You know, voting is the cornerstone of our democracy, but you can't vote if you're not registered. And we have over 194,000 registered voters currently in Thurston County. And it is very simple to register to vote. You can go online at votewa.gov. It takes about 5 minutes. All you need is your Washington State driver's license or ID card, or the last 4 of your social security number. And our biggest goal in voter registration is reaching young people. Only about 70% of 18 to 24-year-olds are registered to vote in Thurston County. And they're also, unfortunately, the lowest turnout population. But what's really exciting is we can now register 16 and 17-year-olds. They can pre-register to vote, and if they're going to be 18 before the general election, they can actually vote in the primary. And I have to say the turnout of this group, the people who had just were turning 18 before the election, their percentage of participation was much higher than the 18 to 35-year-olds. So that gives me hope that if we can get folks registered when they're young, we're going to increase participation in our democracy. So 2022 is the 9th National Voter Registration Day in Thurston County. And your efforts today help us increase awareness of the importance to registering to vote and participating in our democratic process. If we don't participate, we don't have a voice. So I really encourage everyone to take part in our elections. It's easy to register, and you can also register up until 8 p.m. on election day. So thank you again for your support and your partnership on this and so many other important issues. I really appreciate all of you.
Thank you, Mary. And I hope we're going to have a voter station in the Lacey Library again this year, right?
Of course, that is our second voting center, and we anticipate that we will have that for as long as the library will have us. We feel that it's a very central point to complement our voting center in Olympia. So we're very excited to have it there.
Great. Well, thank you for having your office do that for the people of Thurston County and in the city of Lacey. And I definitely encourage everyone who's not registered to vote, if you're able to register to vote, please do so. So thank you, Mary.
Thank you very much.
And so next up on our agenda is Resolution 1120 relating to the flag policy. And is this Shannon? Yes.
Well, good evening, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, and council members. Before you is Resolution 1120, which would amend the flag policy found in Section 512 of the City Council Policies and Procedures Manual. The update was reviewed and recommended by the Commission on Equity at their July 25th meeting, and then reviewed by the Lacey City Council on September 8th during a work session. The update would include the purpose of the flag policy, that the city's flags are to be used exclusively by the city as a form of government expression, how flags are to be displayed, the Commission on Equity's role in the process, approval information, and then inclusion of displaying the Progress Pride flag, the Juneteenth flag, the Nisqually tribe flag, and the Squaxin tribe flag. I'd be happy to answer any questions that the council has on this resolution.
Are there any questions? Is there a motion?
Is this the same that when we were talking about?
Last work session, yes. So I'll move to adopt Resolution 1120 relating to the flag policy. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, now we can have some discussion.
So when we were looking at this,
Yeah, just making sure.
oh, right, we were talking about, the flag policy and the moving those, the vetting of that process to the Commission on Equity.
Yeah, that's correct. So in this, what we have before us, it basically says that when any new flag maybe come before the council, that it would be, it could possibly go to the Commission on Equity. The discussion that we had at the work session is that should it be an automatic, should they automatically go to the Commission on Equity, or should the council direct it on a case-by-case basis? And so I had brought up the opinion that I thought the reason why we have a Commission on Equity is for them to look at issues just like this, so they can, that's why we have a Commission on Equity, is to look at issues relating to specifically like this. And the Commission on Equity did make a recommendation on this to move it forward. That was the discussion. I think by practice, I think most of the time, we will be sending this to the Commission on Equity. The question is do we want to make it mandatory or not?
Gotcha.
So I'll start with my comments on that particular area. So the recommendation from the Commission on Equity was the may, not the shall. So I think we should stick with their recommendation, and that I think is what we should be voting on. I have, I'll add a couple other comments. I've had a problem with our flag policy since the day it was adopted. I voted against it in the original form. I still don't believe our flag policy is a good flag policy. I think it's extremely discriminatory. I think it puts certain groups over other groups, and I've never thought this was a good policy. I still don't think this is a good policy. I do believe this is better than the current policy, but still not a good policy.
Councilmember Steven?
Thank you, Mayor. I think we've already set precedents that it should be shall and not mandatory. The last time we did this originally, we had less than 30 days or something, if I remember correctly. So I think precedents decides this for us. It's kind of like the U.S. Supreme Court sometimes, or just courts or judicial system in general. Usually it goes by history. So I'm leaning towards that, but I'm not set in stone.
Councilman?
So most of the constituents that I speak with on this subject of flags, they don't think that, and I agree with this sentiment, that special interest flags draw away from the intent of our one United States, our one American flag. That flag represents all of us, regardless of who they are. As long as they're an American citizen, it doesn't matter who they are, where they come from. The American flag represents it all. We have our American flag, we have the state flag, we have the city flag. We have a flag that represents people that we can't account for that are either missing in action or POWs. We cover everybody, and we honor this city by raising the American flag, state, city, and POW flag. I think that special interest flags draw away from that. And I agree with Councilmember Greenstein that this is a discriminatory practice, and I think that we should just stick to the basics when it comes to the flag policy.
Go ahead.
Well, I respect my co-council members, but I respectfully disagree. I think the reason for these particular flags that are being flown is because these groups have been routinely discriminated against. And I am very much in favor of passing the flag policy we have in front of us tonight. I'm in favor of leaving the language as may go to the Commission on Equity, simply because there may be some that are just so simple and straightforward that it would be kind of a waste of everybody's time to do it. But I will defer to the council majority. Thank you.
Go ahead, Councilor.
So one more comment about that. If we didn't have the American flag, we wouldn't have this conversation about discrimination. So it all goes down to the basics, the foundation, the principles of how this country came about. To have these special interest flags, it literally sets apart and divides this community. And again, I'm going to insist that we as a council consider sticking to the basics, keeping it traditional, American, state, city, POW flag. And we don't need any special interest flags.
So you're against the Nisqually flag and the Squaxin flag?
Special interest flags.
Okay, that's where I'm gonna have a complete disagreement with the council. I don't believe this is special interests. I think the Juneteenth flag, the Nisqually flag, the Squaxin flag, these are, first of all, Nisqually and Squaxins were around before the United States. We're on their property, right? To say that they're a special interest is shocking. The Juneteenth flag and the Progress flag, I don't think those are special interest either. These are individuals under the United States who have been discriminated against from the time we've been the United States.
You just said under the United States, under the same flag that you and I pledge allegiance to every council meeting.
And there's nothing wrong with recognizing equity within our community and recognizing these individuals who have sacrificed as United States citizens and have not, most of the time, received all the rights and privileges as the rest of us. So I don't, it's just we just look at the differently. I don't see that any of these are special interests at all. Anyway, there's a motion and a second. Is there any more discussion?
I have a question.
Sure.
Would POW MIA be considered special interest? To anybody?
The intent behind POW and MIA is that they have no voice because they are missing.
That's the intent on the others as well. So, is there any more?
Yeah, actually, there is a little bit more. Love God, love people. You guys have all heard that before. Mm-hmm. Some of us have preached that message. What does that mean? Agree with everything that somebody does, or does that just mean love God, love people? I have to think that if I am to love God, there's no flag for that. But if I am to love people, can I love somebody without agreeing with them? Isn't that the question that we're trying to answer? Can I love you without agreeing with you? If my kid makes a bad decision, I still love my kid. If we disagree on something, I can still love you,
Absolutely.
right?
I'm not sure it's certainly not the point I'm trying to make.
I'm not saying that.
Issue.
I'm not saying that you're trying to make. I think I'm trying to establish a correlation. So, if I'm to love people, am I to ignore what they go through, or can I say, hey, listen, I love you, I care about you, I want you to know this is a safe place, I want you to know we're thinking about you, I want you to know that you're cared for, especially if they don't feel loved and cared for, if they feel marginalized, if they feel that, I'm more disposable than you are. Can I do that? Is that something that can happen?
No.
If
I agree, and I agree that this council can agree with that position and support it according to our flag policy.
So what I would say to what you just said, Councilmember, is I agree with every word you just said. Yeah. I don't believe the flag policy is the way to express that for multiple reasons. Primarily, and the reason I say that I consider this flag policy discriminatory is not because it does fly certain flags, but because it doesn't fly others. Those groups that are being represented, the American flag, as Ed said, represents everyone. So do several of those flags represent everyone in this community. Some of these flags represent specific groups within the community. There are many other groups that have been marginalized, that have been discriminated against, that have suffered the same indignities as what you're referring to, that we all still should love. I totally agree. But we're not flying their flags. And that's the reason that I say that I consider this flag policy discriminatory, is because we are picking and choosing which groups to put a flag up for and not doing it for all. That's my issue with this.
The flag policy will allow if another group wants to come and before the council, and there's a process that's as it's laid out in our flag policy to go through that process. The progress flag, which is what we're talking about, is specifically aiming at everyone who's been marginalized. So that's why the progress flag.
Everyone who's been marginalized. That flag represents a group within that group.
That is the intent of the progress flag, and that we can go over it again of what the progress flag means. It's not the pride flag, it's the progress flag. It's changed according to this policy. We're not gonna be flying the pride flag, we're gonna be flying the progress flag. And that does extend to other groups who have been marginalized as well. That's the expression of that flag. Is there any other discussion? Councilmember Vasquez.
I think the distinction of what the flag policy is for is worthwhile, right? This is an expression of government speech. And somebody said it earlier, I don't know if it was Councilmember Cox or you, Mayor, but there have been historical, institutional barriers to inclusion for some people in our community. And we can choose as a government to send a signal to everybody in our community that people should feel included, safe, and as if they belong in our community. And we do it intentionally because in the past, government has not sent that message. There have been laws on the books, there have been unwritten policies that exclude people. And so when we fly certain flags to welcome in those groups that have faced those barriers in the past, it sends a message to the whole community that we're trying to make people safer.
Very well said. Is there any other discussion? Then it's been moved and seconded to adopt Resolution 1120, update our flag policy. Everyone say aye, raise their hand.
Aye.
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 Those opposed? The motion carries. Next up is ordinances, Ordinance 1624 relating to LMC 22.26 and 2.256.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, council members. This proposed ordinance relates to the city's personnel policy and Chapter 2.56 of the Lacey Municipal Code related to the personnel policy. So in January of this year, the city implemented a comprehensive update to the city policy manual. Now, this updated policy manual covers all of the topics which are listed within Section 2.56 of the Lacey Municipal Code. Now, 2.56 of the Lacey Municipal Code was initially adopted in 1970. That was prior to the city's organization as a code city under the council manager form of government. Subsequent to that, the discretion of the city policy, personnel policies, and the implementation of those policies lie with the city manager. So basically, Section 2.56 is moot and redundant, and we don't need the same policy in two separate places. So we are recommending the portion of this ordinance removes that section from the Lacey Municipal Code. The other portion of the ordinance relates to blanket bond coverage. Now, our Washington City's Insurance Authority has recommended that we increase that from the code provision of $150,000 to $2 million per incident. So those are the requested changes. We are recommending that council approve ordinance 1624 relating to those provisions.
I would move to approve Ordinance 1624 relating to Lacey Municipal Code 2.26 and 2.56.
Second.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Councilmember.
So the city will cover the cost of the premiums. Is there a substantial change
First
since the
question.
amount is going up so much, the coverage amount? No? Great.
So we can go from 150 to 2 million without a change in premium?
So I think the issue really is the language has been so outdated. Basically, WCIS, this is the new level, so that's what we're putting in. So it's been that way for a while.
Oh, so this is just a
We've already been paying the $2 million premium. It's just changing on paper?
Correct. And then, again, the personnel references are also out of date, and they're not relevant given the form of government.
Basically a housekeeping ordinance.
So that makes sense. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, it's been moved and seconded to adopt this ordinance 1624. All in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Is there anyone opposed? Then that motion unanimously carries. And now we're on to the city manager's report.
So Honorable Mayor and City Council, 3 items before you. The first one is council priorities, and the Assistant City Manager, Shannon Kelly Fawn, will provide that for you.
Thank you, Scott, and good evening again, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, and council members. Like Scott just mentioned, I'm here tonight to bring forward a updated work plan for you to consider for adoption for 2022 to 2024. In just a brief overview of how we got here, this journey started all the way back in March with interviews with each and every one of you, and those interviews culminated in a follow-up survey. And then from that survey, we did a council retreat in April, on April 28th. And as part of that council retreat, we discussed some of the priorities that you all collectively came to as part of the interviews and then the survey. And then we did another survey, a second prioritization exercise as part of the retreat. Following that, city staff did some follow-up and got together a lot of information and data on what was feasible and possible and what they would recommend for the work plan for this period of time. This was brought to the council at the work session on August 11th, and there was discussion particularly centered around annexation and development regulations. And so you'll see in tonight's updated copy that there has been some changes made in those areas. In particular, I'll highlight a couple of them. So for the first one, for annexations, moving up the review of the annexation policies to 2023. And then for development regulations, really incorporating, the systematic review of development regulations over a period of time. There were also a couple of minor reviews that were made in addition to that, but most of those were cosmetic. So we are here tonight to look at the updated work plan and for you all to consider it for adoption. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
I would move to adopt City of Lacey Work Plan 2022 through 2024.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, we've been actually working on this for quite a while. Started off with our retreat earlier in the year, and I'm happy that the 2 priorities that we've discussed in length is being moved up in the work plan. I think annexation is obviously something I've been talking about for ever since I've been on the council, and I'm really eager to dig into that and come up with a feasibility plan for annexation. And of course, the other work that we need to do is look at our zoning and making sure everything is still compatible. And I know we're going to continue to talk about that actually later after this meeting. We're going to continue to talk about zoning and its importance as we've grown as a city. So other than that, I support this work plan and I look forward to it. Councilmember Stedman.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to bring it to people's attention the redistricting efforts for moving the Thurston County Commission from 3 to 5. representatives, excuse me. In that effort, they've shrinking Lacey and given another district, including Yelm, up into the further east part of the UGA. And so I think now more than ever, it's important for us to be annexing where we can, because it's now affecting future stuff like expanded commission. So something to think about.
Well, there's a lot to think about when it comes to expanding our commission, and it's going to be on the ballot, and so I hope that the county commission can come and give us an update. We've sort of talked about that, with the leadership of some of the other cities in that county, saying, it'd be nice to get a presentation on that to get us all, in the loop on what they're thinking and what they're going to look like, and so hopefully we can set that up here. Anything else? Then there's a motion and a second to adopt the City Lacey work plan from 2022 to 2024. All in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
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 Is there anyone opposed? Then that motion unanimously carries.
Congrats.
So the next item before council is opiate litigation settlement, and our city attorney will provide that update.
Thank you, Scott. Council members, so it was at the retreat, I believe, in April where we previously discussed this matter. As council was advised at that time, there's been some ongoing litigation for several years. The Washington Attorney General's office has been litigating against distributors for the final 2 years and has reached a proposed settlement. This settlement would be up to $518 million that would be distributed to counties, local governments within the state, and of course shared by the state. It would be 50-50 split. The allocation agreement that council considered previously and signed previously was a general understanding, expression from the council that council, on behalf of Lacey, would be interested in participating in such a settlement. The time has come now to finalize that. If the settlement's finalized, local governments, in here it would be whether it's the county or the individual city, that would be a decision that would be made within each county, would have discretion to earmark those funds for particular purposes related to COVID, excuse me, related to opioid-related purposes, treatment, care, recovery, et cetera. For the settlement agreement to become effective, however, a couple things need to happen. 3 things need to happen. The one Washington MOU needs to be signed. Council's already done that. That has been signed. The second thing that needs to happen is that all cities that are either litigating and 90% of cities that are not litigating with populations in excess of 10,000 people need to sign this subdivision settlement participation form. This basically confirms that council is the city's releasing any claims it could have. The city hasn't filed any claims, so that's, non-consequential, but will not initiate any claims. And that it's agreeing to the allocation agreement. The final document is it's the actual allocation agreement. It's the same terms and conditions. It does amend somewhat, not related to Lacey, the terms of the MOU that the council's already authorized the city manager to sign. So what we are asking for today is for council to authorize the city manager to execute these 2 forms confirming the City of Lacey's participation in the settlement that the Attorney General has procured. And of course, I'll answer any questions that council may have.
Can I get a motion?
Yeah, if I can find it again. Yeah, I lost it.
I got it.
I move to authorize the city manager to sign the agreements toward the settlement.
Second.
It's been moved and second to have our city manager sign the settlement, authorize to execute the subdivision settlement participation form. Discussion. Go ahead.
Yeah, just a question. So you said all of the cities or all of the jurisdictions that have litigation have to sign, and 90% of those that don't have to sign. What if that doesn't, and what if you're not able, well, not you, but if the state's not able to get those signatures? Then it fails
Settlement
and the
fails.
settlement doesn't happen.
That's correct. That's correct.
Is there anticipation that they will be able to get the signatures, or do they know?
Yes. Nationally, this agreement is very similar to other agreements that have occurred throughout the nation, and none of them have not been approved by the jurisdictions. There is some, getting things through government can be timely. So, the Attorney General's office has been very persistent in sending reminder emails and making sure everybody's aware of everything that's going on. And I have no reason to believe that the number of necessary jurisdictions won't sign, but of course I can't. I don't know that.
Sure. It doesn't seem that there'd be any, it would be in their interest not to sign. To not get the settlement doesn't help anyone.
Would be a message that the city is not interested in receiving any funds, so those funds would go elsewhere. It wouldn't impact the total amount, but it would risk the fact of a settlement at all.
Right.
And if the city doesn't sign, that might be a signal that it wants to instigate its own litigation, which we are not prepared to do.
No.
No,
I didn't mean us. I was talking about more in general. I'm fully in support.
Yes.
Absolutely.
So
We don't need our own litigation.
this would be over 17 years, and it shows the rate, 0.23 for, what does that come out to?
So the short math that I did, and Troy's not here, but Scott will perhaps provide better math. I come up with maybe $500,000 for Lacey. If this settlement amount, you take out the 15% for attorney fees, and then you take half for the state, and then 0.2% comes out to $500,000 roughly.
And so is that $500,000 over the 17 years?
Correct.
So
first payment is December of this year. And, the cities and the county will need to create some sort of agreement as to how these funds, whether they're going to be pooled, whether they're going to be spent individually, and they all need to go towards, exactly. So.
Well, hopefully Thurston County and all the cities listed can get together and come up with a plan, because individually that's not a lot of money, but maybe if we pull it, we can do a few things.
Isn't there also, though, some other ongoing litigation? So this is the distributors, but there's also litigation against the manufacturers, which could be similar or even more money involved in that, I would think, down the road.
The state, the Attorney General's office is also preparing for litigation against the manufacturers, and that's going to begin shortly.
Thank you.
That's good. I think they're all getting off light, if you ask me, what they've done to our communities. But that being said,
I have a quick question.
Go ahead.
So you said for a city that has filed a claim and a city that has not filed a claim, and what circumstances would be present for a city to file a claim?
The big cities, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's several cities that have, and I don't have that list in front of me, but facts supporting a claim may very well, I'm not going to comment necessarily on whether those facts would exist in Lacey. It's certainly probable that they would. But those cities have just joined in, exercised the necessary resources in order to do all the discovery and all the investigation. And this has been going on for, several years. And the cities that didn't file claims, there was always a tacit understanding that any settlement would reach through the state. And so it doesn't make fiscal sense for cities that, to spend their own resources, adding into litigation when others are doing it. So I think once a certain number of cities, began their litigation, other cities found comfort in the fact that those claims were being handled. And then, of course, the states has all the city's interests in it as well. So I don't really have an answer as to why a particular city wouldn't, other than choosing to direct their resources towards that.
Are there any cities in Washington that have their own litigation? Seattle have their own litigation? Yeah.
Yeah, well, and they've all joined as well.
Okay.
So all the cities are on a united front in that regard.
But I still don't understand what would be present that would make a city file? Like, I mean, like,
Well,
is,
it's
can
an
the city,
impact,
does the city
it's
have
on-
to prove that, like, hey, you guys impacted our infrastructure in such a way because of your product?
Correct.
We had fuller hospital beds. We had needles in the street, blah, blah, blah.
It's damages.
All those things.
Correct. The city would have been proving damages based on the distribution of opioid products into their jurisdiction.
Sure.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, it's been moved in second to have the city manager execute this subdivision settlement participation form. All in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Then that motion unanimously carries.
And then the last item is Historical Commission terms. Jennifer Burbidge is on to discuss this subject.
Well, good evening, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, and members of the council. This evening, before you, there is a recommendation to approve the proposed Historical Commission term changes. As I shared at last week's work session, the Lacey Historical Commission terms were originally staggered. But unfortunately, over the years, a number of events have occurred that created a situation where this year, there are 5 commissioner terms expiring, 2 expiring next year, and none had expired last year. So in order to correct this situation and return to regularly staggered expiration dates, staff proposed some term updates, which is located in your packet tonight, and the commission approved and recommended this proposal to you all per that proposal in your packet. So just appreciate your consideration.
Motion, please.
Move to approve the proposed Historic Commission term change proposal.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Obviously, when you're going through government, sometimes things like this come up, and all of a sudden we look up and we have everyone's term expiring at the same time. We're like, how do we get here? But you know, these things happen, and I'm glad we're going to be able to change it, and we're not going to be in this position in the future. With that, is there any other discussion? And all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 Is there anyone opposed? Then that motion unanimously carries as well.
Thank you.
Thanks. So now we're going on to standing and general committees. The Finance and Economic Development Committee is up first. Deputy Mayor.
The Finance and Economic Development Committee met on August 23rd. We got a 2022 second quarter investment report. Director Troy Wu presented the 2022 budget amendments. We had quite a few budget amendments, and that ordinance was brought to council on September 1st, which council approved, and we were able to amend the budget. There was, things that we just couldn't account for. We ordered vehicles, and that order got canceled, and we had to reorder and pay more. The athletic complex design, truck replacement, all the different things that we saw in that ordinance on September 1st. The 2022 mid-year financial report was also something that was on the agenda. Our mid-year general fund reserves increased by 2.1 million compared to the previous year. The 2022 operating expenses for utilities were consistent with the projections, and the operating fund, wastewater utility maintenance and operations fund, and stormwater maintenance and operations funds were also on the agenda. Not a lot of change there. Staff recommended that the 2023 budget be developed with caution, and that because of our, our financial situation as a country, that's it. That's my report.
Okay. Thank you. City Manager.
This may be a Scribner. Can I just throw an audible? I think the title of the first item for the finance report should be 2022 budget amendment.
What does it say?
Just going back to the original agenda.
Oh, yeah.
Does that need a formal amendment, or is that?
22 mid-year financial report, and should say
1623.
Should say 2022 budget amendment.
2022. Oh, yeah. Budget amendment. That's right.
That's what it's called in the minutes from the other meeting.
Okay. Well, I'm sure we'll get that right in the record.
Okay.
Then, No, it's fine. So next up is the General Government and Public Affairs meeting. I'll turn it over to the chair.
Thank you. It's General Government and Public Safety, actually.
Yeah,
It's okay.
there's another one.
The committee met on August 23rd. We had a two-item agenda. One of those items has already been discussed tonight, and that was the amendments to Lacey Municipal Code 2.26 and 2.56, so I won't go into that again. But the other item was the 2021-22 Public Records Update presented by Perry Edmonds and Alyssa Fontaine. And basically, we got the highlights of our public records request, which was in 21, we had 2,568 public record requests received for the city. Of those, 75% of the requests were fulfilled electronically, 22% were closed with no responsive records, 79% were closed within 5 business days, and the total estimated cost to the agency of fulfilling those records requests in staff and legal compensation and such was about $380,000.
Wow.
So it's become a significant budget item fulfilling public information requests. But that is my report.
Is that done by, like, they email it to them and, or like?
You mean the requests?
Yeah, like when they.
Yeah, they come in by email. They can come in, in writing. They can come in, however they want to bring them in. They can email it. They can hand deliver a letter asking for it, and it could be anything. I mean, a lot of these are for the police department. So a lot of these are, accident reports, things like that people request for different reasons, for insurance purposes. It's any request from the public for information that we keep as a public record as a city.
Do we have records for the category of requester? Because some of those come from the public, but some of them may be media requests or
They can come
like
from the
legislative
media, the
requests.
newspaper makes requests all the
Yeah.
time.
Do we know like how many came from each type of?
I don't have that breakdown, but we have the right
Clerk
person
is
at the
here.
table
Yeah,
with us. who
there's the
might
clerk.
be able
First
to
of all, I
answer.
wanted to thank the clerk's office for doing all. This is an incredible amount of work. And, even from the time from I first got in the office till now, everything seems like it's changed. Part of it is how much we've grown as a city, right? So there's just more activity that happens. And as you say, a lot of it does come from the police department. You have a get a citation, you need your information, so that's a public records request. So there's a lot of that going on, but there's just a lot of public records out there that all needs to be managed, and our clerk's office does an amazing job.
Let me give you one other staggering number. 1,897 staff hours in 2021 to fulfill these records. So we're talking almost 1,900 hours.
That's almost a full-time, because 2,080 work hours in a year, right, for one FTE?
Is that what it is?
Yeah.
I don't know.
2080.
So, we've on occasion, we've had some updates about our public records. Maybe we can get some updates about the whole process. It's really good to do that.
So that's what the general government and public safety folks did receive. We do have the presentation. We could definitely give that to council if you're interested.
Let's push that out to full council, because there is so much in there that I think is worth discussing. So, and then, again, thank you. Yeah, thank you, clerk's office too.
Thank you, Perry.
And is that the end of your report?
That is.
Okay, so now we're going on to boards, commissions, and committee reports. I'm up first, and the Transportation Policy Board did meet bright early yesterday, but I'm going to I'm going to hold off on my presentation because I know we have a work session after this, and I'll give it next time. Deputy Mayor?
Just one real quick. LTAC, Lodging Tax Advisory Committee, has met several times. We just got all of our applications in, and earlier this year, we added some, when we found out that the Masons Lodge had been doing that event for, I think it was 40 years.
Yeah.
In the city, and never asked us for a dime. In fact, a lot of us didn't even know that. We realized that there are a lot of people doing things in this community, for this community, that probably could either deserve our recognition or maybe even could use some financial assistance. And so that really opened our eyes. And so we changed up a few things, and I asked the assistant city manager to, make sure that our LTAC application is really getting pushed out so that everybody knows, hey, if you have something, an event that you are going to be doing in the city of Lacey, we have some available dollars to help you with your event. It's things that we pay back as opposed to just fronting somebody a bunch of money. But we made some changes, and we changed the application, and that way we can get a few more metrics and really kind of drill down on how many people are you bringing to the city, how much activity is coming to the city based on your event. And this time we got a lot more applications than we have in the past. So it really worked, and we are up, I think, almost a third in applications. So we got quite a few, and we will be reviewing the second half of those applications tomorrow morning at 10. And that is my report.
Great. So I know Troy's not here to put him on the spot, but how is the LTAC fund looking for this year? Obviously, through COVID, it was way down. That's why we sort of suspended are giving out our LTAC dollars besides the normal regulars that get it. But how's it looking?
Yeah, so year to date, we think we're going to make pre-pandemic levels, so almost $500,000. So I think that was a discussion LTAC had that we were a little bit surprised, but encouraged by the signs that people are traveling again and staying in hotels.
Yeah, that's great. That is one thing that we have to think about too, as I know there's been discussion in this community about a hotel being converted to supportive housing. If that happens, we will be losing LTAC dollars from, and that's the unfortunate side of that. Hopefully a lot of good that can come of it, though. But that is the downside of that. And I'm not sure what that will do to the budget, but it will have a negative impact on it.
We'll have to build a new hotel.
Yeah, hopefully a new hotel will come in. Councilmember Cox.
Righty. Well, I had a long day of meetings yesterday, and it started with the Olympic Region Clean Air Agency meeting, covered for Robin, who is our lead on that. The quickest highlights of the meeting were we got a report on the recent smoke episodes from the White River fire and other fires. And we actually, it didn't feel so good at the end of August, early September, but we actually, according to the monitors, got pretty lucky because the smoke stayed high. And we got to the yellow-orange hazard category, but it never got to red like has been experienced in Eastern Washington. And just a quick note, they're really working more on public outreach. They're redoing the website to make it more accessible. They've just gotten onto the Nextdoor social media site, and because of that, they were able to get out ahead of the smoke events, and this covers like a 6-county area. And right up off the bat, they got 150,000 subscribers, and so pretty good work on that. And then they're doing a lot of outreach work right now. It's to contractors to offer guidance on asbestos removal with the idea of educating for prevention of problems with that. And then Regional Housing Council met yesterday. We agreed to recommend hiring Catholic Community Services to manage the Housing and Essential Needs, or HIN program, and the Rapid Rehousing program. These are the programs that the Community Action Council decided not to engage in, and so we're a little behind the 8 ball on this, but we're moving forward now with these contracts. So the HIN contract is for $2.4 million, and the Rapid Rehousing contract is for $200,000. We also had a lengthy discussion about governance of the Regional Housing Council. The proposed model that we were looking at would add 2 non-voting members of the Thurston Thrives Housing Action Team to the Housing Council and establish advisory groups. And it would also create several county staff positions to support the work of the council. We haven't quite gotten to consensus on that, but whichever model we land on would require an update to the interlocal agreement that this council signed. And that agreement is expected to probably stay the same for several years. But please know that we're going to be gradually working to transition to become an independent agency with our own staff like Joint Animal Services does. So that's the ultimate goal. And then last night, we got our first detailed look at the LOT, Clean Water Alliance budget. There will be a public hearing on the budget in October, and it may be approved then if we can get consensus. If not, we'll push it to November. But it's about 5.5% higher than the current, this is a biennial budget, than the current budget is. We also heard an update on the Deschutes Estuary plan, and they hope to have a memorandum of understanding with all the parties. Lacey is not one of them, but still important players, by October, and actually begin design in 2023 and hopefully get state funding to help with local in 2024. Those were the mainest highlights. That's my report.
Councilmember Greenstein.
I will give my report at the next meeting. I have a couple of things that we're in the middle of that I want to put together for my report.
Councilmember Stedman.
No report. Carolyn covered some of it in the Community Action Council. So,
Great.
yeah, that's it.
Councilmember Kunkel.
Thank you, Mayor. JazzCom met Monday, September 12th. Focus of the meeting hinged around the findings from the Capital Facilities Plan project, which our council has already been briefed on in our last work session, the obvious focus on the animal shelter. Additionally, we discussed the poor condition of the kennels in the current facility. It will not be feasible to continue to mend and do small repairs on the kennels currently in service, and we are very likely to invest in new kennels for the current facility in the near future. But the staff is doing further research to see if we could purchase or acquire kennels that can be potentially repurposed for the future new facility as an option. For Lacey Chamber, we met, we had our forum on the 7th. Keynote speaker was Cheryl Haywood from Timberland Regional Library, and it was a great presentation. It's amazing how much our library has evolved and in service to our community over the past 20 years. And lastly, solid waste. We met Wednesday the 7th. On the agenda, we had an update on potential South County transfer station and public engagement. And feedback has been successful so far in suggesting amenities and potential locations. Our SCADA system upgrade is anticipated to be completed by the end of this year. And our flare system has to be condensed down for a smaller capacity and will mostly be complete by this month. Pump system upgrade for our pump stations and stormwater pond. We have supply chain issues adding to the cost and the timeline. Rebidding the issue in September. Actually, this month they're rebidding that issue. And then lastly, our compost procurement ordinance discussion. There is a working draft ordinance in place as a reaction to the last legislative session in an effort to adopt policy to reduce methane emissions, and it is still a work in progress. And that is my report.
Councilmember Vasquez.
I have two reports, I think. The intercity transit meeting was canceled, so no report there. And thank you to Carolyn for going to the ORCA meeting on my behalf. For Thurston Regional Planning Council, one of the things that was celebrated is that Vina is moving on after many, many years serving the TRPC. So anybody who worked with her, she's been a great partner, but she's moving on, taking some time off, and then she's going to go do something else with her life. But they covered the work program. So there's going to be an upcoming work program committee meeting to identify the agenda for TRPC for the next year. And I volunteered for that as one of the 3 or 4 people who are just one meeting to figure out what we're going to work on for the next year. There was also a presentation on federal funding, the call for projects process. So it's posted if anyone is curious on how we identify projects that make the cut for federal funding receipt. They also had a presentation on our regional transportation improvement planning process. And then I wanted to share for the Thurston County Board of Health. So I shared at our last meeting, I think, that I was one of the appointees, but we're also adding additional members. So there's 3 folks from the community and 1 tribal representative that still need to be identified. Well, here's the update. We've got 3 of those people figured out. So we did interviews on September 6th. We had a number of very well-qualified candidates, so we did in-person and remote interviews. And we identified, and the Board of County Commissioners just appointed 3 people. Dr. Beth Harvey, who has decades of health policy experience in addition to being a practicing medical doctor. Maria Williams, who has a doctorate and in psychology with specialization in addiction issues and substance use disorders. And Lynn Nelson, who is a registered nurse who works for the school district, ESD 113. So one of the main goals with the expansion for the public health boards across the state was to identify people who have public health experience to assist with elected officials making public health decisions. So I'm really excited about the people that we've identified because all of them have some sort of either medical credential or public health policy experience. So it's going to be a great addition to the board. And that board meets next sometime in October.
So does that mean you have 1 seat left to fill, and that's the tribal member?
That's right. So the tribal representative is still to be determined.
Is that the end of the report? Well, just like that, we have reached the end of our agenda. Go ahead.
If I can?
Yep.
Hey, an article just came on, news break, I think it was. Maybe Scott can answer it. People keep asking me about is the Nordstrom rack coming to Lacey? It says Olympia on the article.
Rick?
You know anything about that, Scott? Rick there to answer? Or?
Yeah, we don't have any information about a Nordstrom rack coming in at this point for a TI or a land use. But we do have a couple of projects that don't have tenant's name, but we don't have any information on a specific user.
All right, is one of those projects have to do with the old Sears building?
Yes.
You have an update
But I don't think, yes, right now, we have issued land use approval for the reoccupancy of the empty Sears space, and they're currently working on their site work and tenant improvements. And I believe that's going to be an at-home retailer.
Okay, thank you. I was just getting inundated with calls and texts about those 2, and so I figured I'd ask.
And one thing to add to that too, just so everybody's aware, this is one of the pieces of our form-based codes that was adopted several years ago, and this area was still undefined, so it was a master plan. So one of their first steps, just if the TI triggered the improvements, to start master planning the Sears property and start establishing future pedestrian and road corridors or the eventual and development paths, so that the eventual redevelopment over time, and that will set the stage for the rest of the properties as they come in for their work that will be building off of that. So that's one first step with the implementation of form-based codes in that particular area.
Wow.
It's exciting because it's right next to the trail, so it's this opportune place for more development for trails and pedestrian passageways.
Yeah, I'd love to see some more residential, some apartments going behind there. That's such an empty parking lot, and if you could do something up against the trail, of course, it's not, I think it'd be a permitted use, but they have to work together with all the landowners there, and I still think they should go for it, but if anyone's listening out there. Anyway.
Ditto.
Yeah. Yes, we're going to be
not adjourning from here to do that. There was a request to do a projects update in a future work session.
Yes, we'll be scheduling that. I'm not sure if it's going to be, I think it's going to be in October, but I have to look at the schedule, but we are scheduled to do a projects update, very similar to the presentation we gave last year with the mapping and showing the various projects around the community.
That's great. That's always really good to know. Sometimes it feels like the council's last to figure out what's going into our own city, because obviously if it's not, doesn't come before us on a special use, we don't know. We know along with the rest of everyone else knows. So
people ask you
all the time.
What's that? You know, it's on the city website.
Yeah. I always feel horrible when I don't know. Yeah. Okay, we reached the end of our agenda. I think one thing we've learned is that I'm like Ron Jeremy, or if something's in front, Ron, or something's in front of me, I just read it. Ron Burgundy. Why I said Ron? Ron Burgundy. I like it. Anyway, I'm definitely adjourning to a work session. You keep it classy, Lacey. We give us 5 minutes. We'll be at a work session.
We have to
So from the 50s, you know, they were a
It's
big
giving
deal
me a
then.
headache.
But
A
it
song
was,
called Speedos.
Yeah, that's their biggest hit.
Yeah?
Speedo. That
Okay.
was in one of the
Fun
movies,
sound
I forget
effects.
which one.
If we log out.
But anyway, she owned the rights to all of the
Space rock?
music. She passed away I think, several years ago now, but
It's almost like we're in a space,
yeah,
just
she really the song Speedo was in the movie, maybe 30 seconds. 10 grand for that 30 seconds.
Believe it.
But where the real money was in Europe.
There you go. See?
Because that movie from the 50s is still very popular.
Oh, maybe not.
No songs on the radio. She was making, and I'm talking into the 90s. You know, she passed.
That's part of it.
She was making
70 years.
She was making six figures of residual income a year from the music from the 50s.
Now just imagine how much Robert Plant makes.
Beatles music, I know what that Paul McCartney owns.
Mike likes to buy people.
I don't know what the system.
Bought all of Little Richard's music.
Oh, really?
Gave it to him.
And they gave it
Still hear a little
Yeah, it was
echo.
like a 20.
I know. It seems like
Really?
It sounds good now, guys, on my end.
it sounds better. Quietly. Seems like. You want to try to give this a shot?
Yeah, Mike was a beast.
Yeah, on my end, you guys sound great. You know, there's no echo.
Maybe if we just talk. Once she talks, does it sound if you talk?
Can we just turn the mics off? Can we turn the mics off or something?
There's a secondary signal there.
Wasn't there a main meeting where you could turn down that?
Bouncing. It's getting late. Getting tired.
I'm getting a headache from this crap.
I have my technical abilities zero.
This happened when I switched to over here.
Too many cooks in the kitchen already on this one.
Because we had turned off over there.
Over there.
Now you got a signal bouncing. Click them.
Can we switch back over here? Good.
Just sit back at the dais.
Let's sit back and that'd be easier.
Things made sense.
Either way, whatever you guys.
Yeah, let's go back to council.
Will it be Zoom?
You just have to camera it again like they were.
Yeah, we would just
Is TC Media still here, John?
Yes.
Let's go over and talk to them. Let's go back to the dais. Wow.
Well, this is a fun field trip.
I do, but I don't need to, I can get it pulled. I can talk without slides.
You can talk from your seat.
Yeah.
Well, that's exciting.
Really? Where somebody had been recording
Well, just like that, we had some major technical difficulties here as we were trying to switch from our city council meeting to the work session. We actually sit someplace else for the work session, but we had this weird situation going on, so we actually are back at the dais for this work session. But I'm going to open this Lacey City Council work session to talk about the moratorium criteria and process, and this was something that was brought up at a previous council meeting. So I'm going to turn this over to Rick, and let's go through this.
Great, thank you. So as we're controls. Of course, this is stemming from the previous work session we had 4 weeks ago, talking about the neighborhood commercial designation and going on the effort to review the neighborhood commercial designation and establishing that work program for Community Economic Development Department as well as the Planning Commission. And now that conversation, the question of this moratorium came up related to gas stations and neighborhood commercial. So now we're back to kind of talk a little bit more about what is the moratorium procedures and what that means. So again, moratoriums are authorized as an authorized tool for local jurisdictions to use when you have emergent issues popping up that you may want to take a look at your zoning controls to address it adequately for the community. The authority comes from two places, RCW 35A 63220. That is the optional code city RCW that the city of Lacey operates off under. And also there's rules in 3670A, which is the Growth Management Act. And under that, it establishes that the council may adopt a moratorium or interim zoning regulations, again, without holding a public hearing, but will need to hold that public hearing within 60 days of adoption. This is not a land use action that would require the council to direct it to the Planning Commission and get a recommendation first. The council can act immediately. However, council must adopt findings of fact either before the hearing or immediately after that public hearing when it's scheduled as to the rationale and reasoning behind establishing an interim zoning control or moratorium. Moratoriums can be effective for up to 6 months, and at that time, an initial public hearing would have to be held in order to renew that moratorium. There is a provision that you can have a moratorium last up to 1 year if there is a work plan to develop any required studies or processes to address the issue. And again, as I mentioned before, the moratoriums can be renewed on a 6-month basis moving forward after holding a public hearing. This, we've had, the city of Lacey has put in place interim zoning controls or a moratorium in the past related to land use. There has been 2 times in the 22 years I've been working for the city of Lacey. One was Ordinance 1240 in May of 2005. That was a situation where there was concerns about the development of large-scale distribution centers out in the northeast area. At that point in time, there was a temporary prohibition on any new applications for development of structures greater than 200,000 square feet to allow the city some time to study the infrastructure as well as the land use impacts of large box distribution. That moratorium directed the city staff to develop those studies and work with the Planning Commission to develop modifications to the comp plan and zoning ordinance. That particular moratorium was renewed one additional time, and a final ordinance and comp plan amendment was adopted in May of 2006, roughly 1 year from the date of the original action. The second one up there is a little bit different. And again, looking at the light industrial issue, that was looking at a specific building type within a zoning classification. Ordinance 1383 was adopted in February 2012, and this was interim regulations and zoning for medical cannabis facilities. At that time, in gross substitute House bill, or Senate bill, 5073, established that local jurisdiction had to allow qualifying patients to create collective gardens. But they also allowed that we could set up interim controls while we established the new regulations. So we actually adopted a standard interim zoning regulation that, and directed that to the Planning Commission to work on that, those final ordinances, and held a lot of public meetings in order to do so, to create the final action. And that occurred in July of 2012, about 6 months after the enaction of the interim zoning controls. And I think probably some of you may remember that particular process when you had your time on the Planning Commission. So I wanted to just kind of highlight those are examples of things that doesn't happen very often, but there has happened in the past. There's been another moratorium that's related to environmental quality or impacts related to, I think it was Covington and Woodland Creek Estates, and that was related to septic system failure. That was one other time that the city enacted a moratorium for new septic system or permits. So generally, the effect of a moratorium is really just putting a pause on new applications that come in on a particular land use topic that is concerned to the city. It's, again, an ability for the city or the city council to look at emergent land use issues to make sure that they are something that is acceptable to the city, and ability to develop studies and future regulations. It does have an effect on application vesting. So any application, applicable application that's subject to the moratorium is submitted after adoption of the moratorium does not vest under those previous zoning rules, and we would not be able to accept it as complete, and it would not go through any type of review process. However, just be clear, any application that's submitted prior to the enaction of a moratorium would vest under those existing codes and regulations, and we would process it through while we work through the moratorium issue. The other part of the moratorium effects is does send a message out to the community and beyond. In a lot of cases, moratoriums may address vocalized concerns raised from community members, council members, staff. It could come from various different entities, but on specific projects or issues. But on the reverse of that, moratoriums may create concerns for property owners and the development community related to predictability of land use regulations, as well as investment in potential development rules. So I bring those out because there's two audiences there in a sense, and it's also about making sure that if good reason needs to be in place and articulated in order to enact a moratorium. So going back to the neighbor commercial topic, which is this conversation is stemming from, this is a slide that you might remember from the previous work session. We talked about the neighborhood commercial designations. I just want to throw this up there to just kind of give the council context of where the neighborhood commercial designations are in the city of Lacey. Again, there's 8 locations within the city of Lacey and 3 in the UGA. Any action by the council on this type of topic would not affect those that are in the UGA. These designations have different characteristics and demographics around them, so they're all somewhat a little bit different. But we do have about 5 undeveloped neighborhood commercial designations in the city. 2 up in the northeast area, and I have them circled on that map on the side. 2 down along College Street at 37th and College and 45th and College. I call the 37th and College undeveloped because it has some development there with the Brian Johnson Academy and across the street at the farm, but there's a lot of property around that is still undeveloped. And then out on Mullen Road and Carpenter with the new, right there adjacent to the new roundabout that was installed by the county. So those are the 5 undeveloped locations, and they all have somewhat similar, or excuse me, different characteristics. The other part, I want to just kind of reflect back on the Meridian Market fuel and gas conditional use permit, because again, that's a lot of where this was been highlighted came from, and some of the issues generally raised in that application process through testimony of surrounding neighborhood citizens, including just general topics. They had concerns about pedestrian safety, school impacts to the adjacent park, environmental impacts, tree removal, those type of things, that there's no demand for the particular services, concerns about the compatibility of those type of uses or design on adjacent neighborhoods, property value impacts, and crime. And I bring that up again, that was related to specifically the gas station proposal out in Meridian campus. But I also want to, in this next slide, highlight that within the neighborhood commercial zoning classifications, there are several permitted uses outside of just a gas station opportunity that could meet some of those concerns out in the development. So there's over 58 types of uses that are allowed in the neighborhood commercial zone. This is just a snippet of those, and I bolded some of those that I think could also fall into those same kind of concerns if the development occurred in a neighborhood commercial zone next to a neighborhood. Yes.
If I may, in my attempt to get in my motion, I specifically only named 4 or 5 different uses, not 58, the same.
Yes, and I just want to highlight this because there's a lot of different types of allowed uses in the neighborhood commercial district. And, the focus has recently been on the compatibility of a convenience store and gas station. And the issues raised, I have seen in my experience, apply to other types of uses. And, you got garden, nursery centers, grocery, liquor store, hardware, garden supply, those type of things that if you do an action, we're still working on reviewing the neighborhood commercial designation, but also there are other development that could come forward that can cause the same type of concern. I just want to make sure that council is aware of that in addition to the recent experience that we just had. Also in there is under conditional uses, bar and cocktail lounge, and also residential uses, which again goes back to compatibility. And, if you have a little bit multifamily style use or mixed use style use, that could have some concerns for surrounding neighborhoods. So in looking at options, if the council wants to consider these, any type of action on a moratorium, again, one option is to adopt a moratorium on development all development within a commercial designation. And then second option would be to adopt a moratorium on applications for specific uses, very similar to what the city council did back in 2005 for large industrial buildings. Both those have different merits and pros and cons. The challenge with adopting a specific uses is what are the types of uses you would want to consider in relationship to what's allowed in the neighborhood commercial zone. The third option is to not adopt a moratorium and continue on with the direction the council gave at that work session to start the process for reviewing the neighborhood commercial designation. That process was estimated to be, this is the outline of that process that was presented at the work session, to include neighborhood forums, a deliberate process to review that, brief the planning commission, land use and environmental committee, develop the alternatives, go back to the neighborhood for feedback, and then work through to eventually get a recommendation for council action. And that particular process is estimated to be at least 8 to 12 months, but it is a long, lengthy public process that could take some time. So going back to the options, that's all something that council would need to consider as they have received or have talked to the community and reviewed some of these land use cases. So again, trying to figure out if you want to do specific uses, what are those range of uses, or if you wanted to look at something neighbor commercial wide, that would be affect all neighbor commercial zones and all types of uses, or it's a timing issue related to option 3 with not adopting a moratorium. Something still could come in for application and review and then be subject to concerns raised by neighborhoods. And one thing I do want to mention too is anytime we have development anymore, or not anymore in history, you're always going to have neighborhood concerns on the change that's going to occur on that, whether it's trees being removed or types of uses. It's a change in the environment, surrounding environment, and so that also just in itself elicits a lot of concerns from surrounding property owners and community members. So I'll stop right there. I do have some slides of the areas of the various neighborhood designations that are undeveloped in the community if you wanted to look at those, but I will stop right there and see if there's any questions from council at this point in time.
Can you move on to one of the slides while we have some discussion?
Councilmember Greenstein?
So is there any chance, Rick, that with option 3, not doing a moratorium, that we could speed that process up at all? And the reason I ask the question, I get it's a lengthy process, but I'm really, really skeptical about a moratorium. I have real concerns with going that route. But at the same time, I think we do need to look at these zones and see what are the logical uses of those zones. So is there any chance we could do that in less than 8 to 12 months? Could we make that a 6-month process and get it done?
I'm hesitant to say yes, because it's one of the things we wanted to do is really try to make as robust of a community neighborhood engagement process as we can. And where the strategy that I conveyed previously was not having just a general community forums, but to go out to the actual neighborhood surrounding each of those different sites, so because they are so unique, get kind of a flavor. And then as public processes go, I think, as y'all aware, you start out with a plan, it could go very smooth, but sometimes they kind of can lag on because you get a lot of feedback and have to have some dialogue. And plus, quite frankly, we'd start in the Northeast area, and there'd probably be a lot of, a little bit of listening session going on that first meeting too. So it's hard to say that we can really bring it back to, it'd be nice to be done in 6 months, but I don't want to be, overestimate that process.
Fair enough, thank you.
So, Councilmember Stedman, was your major concern, was your major concern the gas station that you were looking for more?
No, not at all. So, look, I get public process, and I would argue that we just went through the public process 3 times with the, departments here on Hicks Lake, the gas station on Meridian, and Yelm Highway Walmart, just to name 3. What I'm, all I was proposing was a temporary pause until we could get exactly what the public hearing with the public. I mean, they're saying they don't want gas stations in their local neighborhoods up north anymore, or in the city in general. They're frustrated.
So again, are you talking just about gas stations? Are you looking to do number 2? Or are you looking for a moratorium on any?
I don't know what my motion was, because it was several weeks ago, but it included convenience stores, gas stations, and 3 other things. I can't, I'm going off memory now. But those were the concerns that I heard from the residents, not just at the gas station, but here at Hicks Lake, because it had to do with housing too, one of them. And then with the Walmart, the mini Walmart, that was, but people, when they voice their frustration, and then you can take action to at least delay it, it's nothing permanent. They just want to be heard. So I felt my proposal of a temporary moratorium was valid, and that we could do it because we're the council, and all we need is a majority, whoever's at the meeting. So if there's 5 people, 3 of us. If there's 7 people, 4 of us. And we could have passed that to have that discussion and engage the public. And then, if it became invalid and people really didn't care, then business as usual, or we make it permanent and go through the first option. It was just an option, and that was my concern, that I thought it was a good option. That's it.
Councilmember Vasquez.
So Rick, can you tell us a little bit about what the findings of fact would look like if we decided to pursue options 1 or 2 and we wanted to establish a findings of fact, either to just support the moratorium for 6 months or to extend? What would those look like? What did they look like in the other examples you shared when we did moratoriums in the past?
It's always going to be a little bit different. The industrial square footage, buildings of over 200,000 square feet, the concern was the relationship to job creation, job density, as well as impacts to infrastructure, specifically transportation. So it was the findings of fact were saying these are concerns and these are the things that we need to study, and then direct the staff and planning commission to study those issues and develop recommendations.
So essentially, a findings of fact is these are the reasons why we want to pause.
Right.
To explore these things before we make a final decision.
Right. So relationship to what we're talking about currently with neighbor commercial, it'd be something to the effect that, hey, we have concerns about the range of allowed uses within neighbor commercial and the compatibility with surrounding neighborhoods or the impacts on surrounding land uses. We would like to study the issue, to look at it, to make sure that we are meeting the goals of the comp plan, community and vision, and something along those lines. If the council wants to proceed with something like that, we would go to probably get direction from the council and then prepare for the next meeting an ordinance to establish the moratorium and then follow up with a public hearing, then can reinforce those or enhance those findings of fact.
Follow-up question. So you already have a plan to do community engagement on the definitions within the neighborhood commercial. Wouldn't that engagement plan fit the bill for having a work plan? So if we said we wanted to do a moratorium, numbers 1 or 2, and we said, okay, well, we have to have a work plan to explore the issue after we create our findings of fact, doesn't that engagement plan kind of look a lot like a work plan?
Yes, I believe so, because we already have, we have the outline, we have the direction, and we have the estimated time, and we would specify, in the findings of fact, what we're looking for for the study under that work plan and program.
Is there any other, go ahead.
Yeah. Can you explain why the gas stations and bars and lounges are conditional use permits within that?
And are those the only two?
Those are the only two, I believe. I looked at it today, and yes, those are the only two I see listed in there. The reason I would expect is, well, usually typically, and in the creation of the zone, is those are the type of uses that may have a little bit more concern that they should be allowed as neighborhood convenience, but they may have certain elements to them that require a little bit more view or look at to make sure that any impact from them can be mitigated. So in the sense of, you can have a convenience store under administrative land use approval, but as soon as you add the fuel islands, that adds a different component to compatibility or impacts that should have a little bit higher level view to address those specific impacts. Liquor and, bars and nightclubs, they, depending on the perception of what goes on at bars and night activity, that's something, if it's in the middle of a neighborhood, that may have some additional conditions that should be probably like limited hours, those type of things. But that's an old reference, because now we have, the newer craze of tap rooms, and is tap room the same as a bar or a lounge in people's perspective? So those are some of the things that we do need to talk to the public about, and what their expectations are in their neighborhoods.
I mean, I've been mulling this over, and I guess I have less of a pause to think about maybe we should suspend the two conditional uses right now as this goes through the process. We don't have any applications for either one of those right now anyway.
Well, if we did, the moratorium wouldn't affect the ones that
Yes.
we're in anyway.
So, but with those two conditional uses, that would prevent us going through a very similar situation where we'd push it in the quasi-judicial, because everything else is just go as a normal. But if we suspended those two uses, I think we could get to the intent of wanting to pause and re-examine everything, with those being the sort of the two more controversial ones. I mean, where's the council on pausing on those two?
Well, my concern, even with pausing on those two, is the concerns on the gas station convenience store were on that specific site.
Mm-hmm.
Each of these 8 locations are completely different. And I don't know that the same concern, for instance, at College and 37th, I don't know that there would be a concern in that area if someone wanted to put a gas station on that piece of property, as an example. So I'm just not sure why we need a moratorium. I favor option 3. I think we need to do this. I would like to see it done now and moved as fast as possible. I get that we can't necessarily get it done in 6 months, but I think we need to have a real public process, because we got the feelings of a group of people at one location. That wasn't what I would call a public process, because that and the Hicks Lake situation completely different, right? Yeah. The Hicks Lake situation, for instance, if you were to do a moratorium on those two things, would have had no effect on that, because it was residential. It wasn't either of those. So I don't personally think the moratorium is the answer.
I think the Hicks Lake one wasn't about it being housing units, it was the amount of housing units.
But you're right.
So that's what
this moratorium would have no effect on that.
Unless you put that in the moratorium as well.
Yeah.
You could put a moratorium on anything.
Councilmember Kungle.
Yeah, so my 2 cents worth on option 3, which I would support, giving careful balance to the interests and needs of the community and to the property owners themselves. I am all for a thoughtful process of gaining feedback from our community for these designated areas and making a thoughtful decision on changing any of our zoning as needed, but putting restrictions on property owners out of haste, it just doesn't seem like a rational approach. And to your point, there isn't anybody that's dropped any applications in these particular areas. To Lenny's point, we may have a different response depending on the location of the property and what's going to be done with it. So my take is let's not use the moratorium process and just get some feedback from the community and come up with a more reasonable, thoughtful approach to our planning.
Councilmember?
I would say if someone did drop the application, we'd all know it instantly, within seconds. I guarantee you that.
Can I ask you a clarifying question? With the 8 different locations, which are under the same zoning currently, right? Is there any reason that they all have to stay with the same allowable uses? I mean, can we change that? So as you do this public, process, right, and we find out that maybe one of the ones north of I-5 shouldn't have a gas station, that's not what the people there want, but maybe one of the other 8 gas stations perfectly appropriate. Is there any reason the zoning in these 8 areas has to stay the same and have the same allowable uses?
No, there isn't. Because what I would expect, and it's kind of more of a neighborhood-based process that we could use, where we define by neighborhood or planning area. In this particular planning area, these are the type of ranges because of certain dynamics or traits of that particular designation or location. You could even say, hey, this is not a good location for a designation because it's close proximity to another one, or it's not, development is very difficult with access and those type of things. So through this process, we'll be able to look at each designation and assess what does it really meet for that neighborhood characteristic. One thing I forgot to mention, I do want to mention though, just for information for the council, is we haven't had any active, recent pre-subs or inquiries on any of these, except about a year ago, we did have a pre-sub on the neighborhood commercial designation up at 41st and Marvin Road, which is the very top red circle. That's about a year ago, and they're trying to deal some small-scale residential, or excuse me, commercial with potential residential. But that's something too they're trying to figure out site plan and how to fit within the context of the code.
The circle that scares me on that map is the other one on Northeast Lacey that is in the same general neighborhood of the gas station, and that's the one where I feel like if an application came in for another gas station, which could possibly happen, we would.
Could we do a moratorium on a specific location of the?
Yeah.
I would recommend not to, because then you're getting down to specific parcel versus the actual zoning classification and the issue of the allowed uses.
Yeah, I mean like I said, that's the only one that, on everything else, you're right, I absolutely agree with everyone. It's like, it's so hard to predict what's acceptable in one location, what's not acceptable in another. For example, there's a new 7-Eleven gas station that came in, and Panorama is right down the street. Same sort of circumstance, and on one hand, it was, accepted because I guess there was others, already there. In this circumstance, it was not accepted at all. So it's tough, but that's the one spot that sort of does concern me. But I'll go with the majority of the council here.
I'm actually supportive of option number 2. I think that I agree with some of the council members that I don't want to create a chilling effect on development throughout the city by creating unpredictable circumstances. But I think number 2 allows us to be very specific with what we're trying to press pause on so that we can do more exploration and engagement. So I would be supportive of number 2, specifically on pausing with the conditional uses for the neighborhood commercial.
Where's the rest of the council at? Where are you at,
I think I'm with number 2 as well. I understand the chilling effects of a moratorium, but I also don't kid myself that if some developers know this is coming down the road, they're going to try to jam those applications in the door and not have to worry about the moratorium either if they're ready to roll. So, I think if we're really trying to accomplish a change here and hear our residents on what they don't want, then this is the way to go.
Deputy Mayor?
I think this is an opportunity to, educate the public, especially in these surrounding areas. And the reason I say that is because, had they known that, they weren't going to be able to change a vested application, they probably wouldn't have showed up or, had so much feeling about it in that there was, at that point, there would, it was, does this meet the law or does it not meet the law? That's it. And so, showing up, handful of feelings does nothing at that point in time. So it appears to me that we have to engage the community, let them know what can go within, 2 blocks of the house that they just bought so that they know, if they, want to get involved, because that's the point you want to get involved, as opposed to, tying some developer hands and saying, hey, we know you've been sitting on this parcel for 10 years and you've been working on, a plan for the last 3 or 5 years, and we're going to do something that can,
So where are you at on the conditional use of the community commercial?
I'm definitely, I'm more with option number 3. I think we need to engage the public, and I think we need to have these forums so that people have a clear understanding of what I literally live 2 blocks from one of those 8 locations. Yeah, and I'm still saying number 3.
Okay. And Mike, where are you at?
Sorry about that. I knocked my thing over. Hey, so I like option 2. I mean, I think we need to do something. The thing I'm hearing the most on is they don't want 300 plus units,
I know,
apartment units.
We're not
they don't
talking
want gas stations. I know, but I gotta rhyme to my reason here. They don't want gas stations. They don't want convenience stores. These lots don't have. They're not big enough to have like 300 apartment complexes on them, so it's not a big deal. But the gas stations and the convenience stores, people don't want in their backyard, and that's citywide. I'll tell you that right now. But that's what I'm hearing. You guys could be hearing other stuff. So I think we should put a moratorium and run through option 1, and maybe the public hearing will have a different outcome, and then we let it go. But at least the people feel like they got heard. So option number 2. So, or 1, it doesn't matter. I think 3 does nothing. It's just, it's just, hey, your opinion doesn't matter. We're just gonna keep going, doing what we do. So, I don't
Certainly
know.
not that.
Yeah.
Certainly not your opinion doesn't
No.
matter.
Yeah.
Option 3 is actually going out and getting the public's opinion.
Yeah. So here's what where I'm at, since it looks like I'm the deciding vote. I do have a concern with a gas station and convenience store going into that one location in Northeast Lacey. It doesn't seem like we have the ability to just say that location, we're gonna exclude that location. I think there are other locations in the community commercial that would do just fine with having a convenience store and gas station, especially on College Street, right? There used to be there's services all up and down College Street that really would support that, and I think it'd be welcome. So it's really difficult to say I'm going to put a moratorium in place for one parcel in the entire city of Lacey. That doesn't feel right, right? It just doesn't feel right. And so I'm going to go with number 3.
I know, but if you take away the last one, then there's 2 locations, and then take the one before that, then there's 3 locations.
Well, I know, but at this point, all we're talking about is the one location in Northeast Lacey, where we Granted, no, if an application comes in for a gas station and convenience store, it would look very unfavorably, and we'll be looking pretty bad. But there's no question about that. But I can't, because of a one parcel, change policy for the entire community commercial. That does not feel right. So that's where I'm at. So we can take an official vote if you want on this, Councilmember.
Yeah, I'm happy to make the motion.
Okay.
I move that we adopt a moratorium under recommended option number 2 to create a moratorium on just the conditional uses for neighborhood commercial or neighborhood residential zoning
commercial.
criteria.
Can I step in for just a moment? What council would be doing would be directing staff to prepare an ordinance for council's
Come on.
consideration. I mean, council would need a document to look at and then take a motion to approve that ordinance establishing the moratorium. So I would be hesitant to recommend that council attempt to establish a moratorium or.
Without that.
With that. Well, not just because we're in a work session. Council can't take action in a work session.
So
you
can.
I can amend my motion
Direct staff.
to request that staff prepare documentation for the council's consideration on adopting a moratorium under number 2.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. I think we've had a lot of discussion here. All in favor of that motion, please signify by saying aye and raise your hand.
With the discussion, right?
Yep, we're in discussion.
Yeah. So one last thing that people don't consider too often is with the getting away from gas-powered engines, combustion engines, the use for future gas stations is probably not something, I mean, if people are willing to invest in it, millions of dollars to put a gas station in, I totally get it. But the way the landscape is looking in the future, it's probably going to be less gas stations than more. So, I mean, something to think about. I'm not saying I'm anti-gas station or whatever. I'm just trying to give the people a voice is all.
I understand that. Is there any further discussion? All in favor of that motion, please raise your hand and say aye.
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 All those opposed? The motion fails.
Now, is there any necessity for a motion for number 3? Because that's already ongoing, right? So no need for that. Okay.
Okay. Well, thank you for the discussion, and I do hope we, with all expediency, take a look at, because I'm hoping what comes out of this process is that we will look at that parcel in Northeast Lacey and say, okay, here are some uses that are now compatible with that area, and allow each of the neighborhoods to sort of engage. That's ideally what we do, and we can do it as soon as we possibly can. Rick?
So part of the strategy is to focus on the northeast areas first, because one, we want to take a little bit of advantage of some of the momentum that was created and interest. And with zoning controls, they're not like the comp plan. We can adopt throughout the year. So if there are some things that come out, they may be able to bring it forward in pieces. That might be a way we can look at some of those issues. If there are things that have to go back and have result in a comp plan amendment, whether by policy or designation or something like that, that of course would have to be bundled up with next year's comp plan amendment cycles. But there could be some things we can look at right away under the zoning controls as we go through this process. So there might be multiple steps.
And so won't that actually change that zone in that particular parcel, right? We're not going, it won't called community commercial, it'll be called.
It's a neighborhood commercial, and it would change the general neighborhood commercial zoning chapter, but it could break up into sub-chapters within it.
Okay. Councilman.
Just a question for clarity on that, Rick. So if you start with the area in North Lacey with that one that's still there, or 2 that were there, do the community outreach, we come to some decisions as a council that we think there shouldn't be gas stations, that just as an example. Would we be able to then make that change at that time by changing the zoning on that? Is that what you're saying, basically? Even before we went through the 8 or 12-month process for all of the areas?
It would be, I'm going to say it's possible, because we have to look at, too, how that affects the comp plan. If we need to do if we have to use something that touches the comp plan, then it kicks us into the full package in July. But there are things that we can do within the framework of the comp plan. There's a zoning code amendment that we can broken out. There's a possibility, but we have to look it out and map that out and see what that would look like. But it could be something we could do.
Excellent, thank you.
Okay. With that, we have reached the end of our work session. It was a lot of good conversation, and I really do think we're on the same page of understanding that our community has changed. We have rapidly grown. There's new pressures, and we need to take into consideration those new pressures. And geez, I remember when there was nothing in Northeast Lacey. I mean, it seemed like 45 minutes to get out to Tomey because there's that one-lane windy road. So now you look out there, it's crazy. And so, I think this is good discussion. I think we do want to do what's best for our community, and that means we have to listen and react. And so, but I don't like doing stuff hasty. I don't like knee-jerk reactions. I think that's bad government. I think you need to be always thoughtful in these things, and sometimes that requires us to slow down and take a deep breath. And I'm glad we're doing that, and I look forward to the process. So with that, I'm going to call it, without objection, I'm going to call this work session adjourned.
Thank you.